The Wisconsin Badgers have a quarterback problem. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Really do appreciate every single person tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Harris, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's talk about today's episode. Is brought to you by FanDuel. It's your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to be talking about the road to 7 wins this year, Phil Longo's offense, your questions. But first, and I might have even been muted on the intro, but first, there's a quarterback issue at Wisconsin, and we got to talk about it because I don't think anything gets solved until that gets solved. Nothing like there's a lot to unpack from this Penn State game, a lot to unpack from the last 2 years, quite frankly. We can talk about receivers not catching passes. That's real. Penn State's defensive line and front seven kind of dominated up front. We can talk about some really inopportune penalties. We can talk about Phil Longo's offense and some conservative nature there. But really, it comes down to I don't think any of that matters unless you fix quarterback. And it's not even a Braden Locke thing. Like, the dude hasn't had a ton of experience, but the quarterback position as a whole, going back to last year to this year, it's not been good enough. And you're not going to – all that other stuff doesn't matter unless you play better at quarterback, because the only way you beat the really good teams in college football, the only way you're consistently an elite team in college football with mediocre quarterback play, and statistically, that's what we have. And we're not even statistically mediocre. Let's be super clear on this. The only way you can be a successful college program with that level of quarterback output is to be elite everywhere else. Kind of go back to think of the Alabama model when they had guys like A.J. McCarron, and McCarron was still a good quarterback. He was better than what we've had here, but they also had just 3 first-round picks in the front seven, 2 elite corners. Like they were incredible everywhere else, so they could get by with more of a game manager. We're never going to have that level of talent everywhere else, so we have to get better at quarterback. It has to get better, right? Braden Locke right now, 15th in the Big Ten in interceptions. I mean, he didn't even play really the first 2. Like, he's 15th in the Big Ten in interceptions. That's with a couple fumbles thrown in. 14th in completion percentage. In his career, he's a 54% completion guy with 12 touchdowns and 7 picks. It's just not good enough. It's just not good enough from that position. And I'm not the guy who comes on and tries to call for people's jobs. It's not even that. It's just, we got to be honest. That's not good enough. We got some comments in here. Again, this is the community show, so we always try to get comments from YouTube, Twitter, the Discord, whatever it is. We bring them up here. It's the Pulse of Badger Nation. I appreciate this show's a little late today. I'm still getting caught up on my voice. This is from Bucky63. I got a couple of quarterback-related stuff on here. He said, you need a quarterback that can run. Look at A&M when they switch to a running quarterback in the second half. Either give Mabry a shot or start looking for another portal quarterback next year who can run. That's from Bucky63. Appreciate the comment. Here's my thing. I don't think you necessarily need a quarterback that can run, but you need a quarterback with a carrying trait. Think about it like in baseball, right? You need a quarterback that has a fastball somewhere, whether that's a dynamite curve, change, slider, fastball, whatever it is. I just don't know if Locke has a fastball. He's not overly big. His arm's not great. It's good, but it's not great. He can't really run. He can move around in the pocket a little bit. I think he's tough. Like, he's tough as hell. He has intangibles that you want, but I don't think the decision-making is elite. I don't think the size is elite. I don't think his ability to run is elite. I don't think his ability to take deep shots is elite. So what's the it's a struggle, right? Like, so when you're saying you need a quarterback can run, I would love a quarterback can run. But if you don't get that, then you got to get a quarterback who's like 6'5" with a big arm, like Tyler Van Dyke. And maybe he wouldn't have been the answer anyway, but you got to find somebody who can elevate the offense somewhere else. It can't all be, well, the receivers didn't help him and the O-line didn't help him, the running game didn't help him. Great quarterbacks help everything else. They don't rely on everything else to help them, right? They don't need everything else to be perfect, and then they can be really good. It's just not good enough. And in terms of going to the portal next year, I think they're going to have to. Like, let's be honest. They're going to have to. Unless, I'll throw this caveat out there, because I think it is super fair to point out, Braden Locke still hasn't played a ton of games. I know people don't want to hear that, but it's true. And a bunch of his games have been against Bama, USC, been against, oh, my camera just zoomed in. Holy cow. Bama, USC, a lot of these other programs. I'm going to try to turn this off while I keep talking. have to play better, and it's not clicking. It's not happening. So I don't think we can go into next year unless down the stretch, unless he really turns it on. You have to go to the portal again, right? Like what? You absolutely have to go to the portal again unless he turns it on down the stretch, because you can't go into next year. If this is the level of quarterback play you get for the rest of this year, you cannot go into next year with this quarterback room. You can't go into next year with Braden Locke as the starter and maybe Matt Toyer, a kid who doesn't have a ton of experience, who I still like, by the way. I think I see people jumping off the Matt Toyer ship. I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. All those physicals, those tools that you still liked about maybe, or that you liked originally about him, are still there. He's just a freshman. His expectation shouldn't be to take the job right now. This one's from Badger Steve. Good quarterback play would be nice to have. It looks fun when I see other teams have it. Yeah. That's just it's so hard without good quarterback play. I want to get into another comment down here. This one is from Mas Tequila on Twitter. He said, every defense coordinator with a crap had seen air raid football for 30 years. Easy for a decent team to defend. Penn State showed true offensive innovation and schooled our D easily. 2 points I want to point here. Penn State's offense is helmed by maybe the best offensive coordinator in college football. Like, it's almost not fair to look at them and say, well, why can't we do that? Because that Kotelnicki is Beethoven with offense. Like, he is at a different level, different tier. I would love to have him. I would trade Door County to get him, but he's a different beast, man. Most guys aren't him. Okay, so I would say, yeah, don't use Penn State as the barometer by which to judge our offense, because they're different, because he is different. I will say this, like, to your first point, I kind of disagree. The air raid football is easy to defend. No, it's easy to defend when you don't get good quarterback play. Like, that's where it's easy to defend. When you don't get good quarterback play and you don't have receivers catching the ball, that's easy to defend. When you get was the air raid easy to defend when Phil Longo had Drake May? No, it wasn't, because he had good quarterback play. That's what it comes down to. Again, it's all full circle. You got to get good quarterback play in college football. You do that, and the rest of the stuff is much easier to fix, period. It's what it comes down to. It's a quarterback problem. And it's been a quarterback problem for 6 years. Like, how for most years at Wisconsin, going back a long time, like, this program has to get a difference maker in that spot. And it's as simple as that. All right, let's get some comments in here. Again, this is always the community show. I've already probably talked too much. Jordan Stewart says UW has a play caller problem. I've been Longo's staunchest supporter, but lack of creativity along with struggles on first and second down, putting Bucky in, obvious third down and longs is killing this offense. It does feel, and it's super stark when you see what Kotelnicki's doing at Penn State, and then you see how difficult it feels for what we're doing. I do think Phil Longo, there needs to be a little more creativity. Like, it feels too simple to defend us. And now I do think some of that goes back to the point I've been making all along. He doesn't have the quarterback he needs, but he's also the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach and the quarterback recruiter. So ultimately, that's on him. Like, ultimately, it's on him to get that guy that drives the train, but he hasn't got that guy right now. And maybe he thinks Locke is that guy next year, right? Like, players continue to get better. I'm not going to sit here and say Locke can't do that. But as of right now, and you saw it before halftime, right? I was super frustrated that we weren't a little more aggressive in that moment, but the reason you're not is because you don't have a quarterback that you fully trust, and that's why you're not. So, yeah, like, it's kind of a chicken and egg. Are you frustrated? Are we frustrated with Longo because of the play calling, lack of creativity, or is he calling it the way he is because he doesn't have the quarterback that he needs to execute this offense in the way he needs to, right? And there's other things too. Receivers got to catch the ball. They got to catch the ball, man. Biggest game of the year at home at night. You got to catch the ball. Will Pauling, we'll just call it like it is. He was a stud last year, and he's been on the show. Like, he's an awesome dude to talk to. I think he's probably in his head now. I think it's probably a little mental because he didn't drop the ball like this last year. He didn't, and his hands aren't great right now. He's got to catch the ball. You got to help out quarterbacks. When you have a guy like Locke, who is still a little young in his career progression and is playing a really good defense in a big moment, you got to not just make the easy catches. You got to make the 50-50 catches, like that ball to Tretch, where there's two guys there and he gets hit. That's a really hard catch to make, acknowledged. But you got to make it, man. You got to help your quarterback out on those. You got to hang on, be tough, get to the ground, throw the first down up, get the momentum and crowd going, because that was actually a pretty nice throw that Locke laced in there. Locke had a couple nice throws to Tretch, another one on the flat. You got to catch that ball. Got to catch it, right? CJ Williams had a drop on the sideline. Receivers got to help him out. A bunch more of your comments coming up here. Again, this is the community show. We're going to keep going here, but first we need to take a quick break for our friends of the show. When we come back, let's talk about Wisconsin's road to 7 wins. And if there are not, that's still going to happen. I'm going to tell you why I think it's still likely they get to 7. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs. Whatever you need to do from a parlay, future, teaser, spread standpoint, just over there on FanDuel right now. Great offer. We talk about all the time. You can start with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed if you place your first $5 bet. It's $200 guaranteed, right? You can do a lot with that. Go bet on the Bucks, man. Go bet on the Packers. Like, there's a lot you can do with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com. The fastest, easiest, simplest way to wager and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. That's FanDuel.com. Head over there. Always do it responsibly, but a great way to spice up your sports weekend over at FanDuel.com. Again, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All right, let's jump back into this road to 7 wins, road to bowl eligibility. Let me throw this comment up here that we had. And again, appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's see. Downstream says, first of all, again, appreciate the comment and the contribution as always, man. I don't think we win another game. Iowa at night equals a loss. Oregon, can we just forfeit? Minnesota, too physical on both sides of the ball. So that just leaves a decent Nebraska game. He goes on to say bowl eligibility is seriously in jeopardy. Thoughts, guys? Do we win another game? Let me say yes to that. Yes, we do. We do win another game. We do win another game. I think we win 2 more games. I think we could win 3 more games. Like, don't completely lose your mind. And I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm a fan, reaction shows. Like, we all get a little too high after wins. And we all get a little too low after losses, right? That's how this works. We know this. We internally know the psychology of this, and yet we still fall into these ebbs and flows like the tides of the oceans. It's almost like we can't help ourselves being pushed in and pulled out. We're going to win more games, guys. Like losing 28-13. And by the way, I don't think the game was that close. People are going to say, well, it's kind of a close game. I'm going to throw some stats up here. I'm going to talk about it. I think Penn State kind of butt whooped us. I felt like the game felt more lopsided in the score. I'm curious if you guys feel that way or not. I know this was 13-14 in the fourth quarter, but to me, it didn't feel like that. It did not feel like that. So I don't know. I'm curious on your take on that too, but we're still, Northwestern 2 weeks ago lost pretty convincingly to Michigan State, right? They just beat up on Northwestern, which we did as well. I was right in our tier. Okay. And we have handled teams in our tier this year. I think we're going to go to Kinnick. It's going to be a coin flip game. It's going to be really hard. I would bet on Iowa, but we could absolutely win that game. That's like a 60-40 game. Okay, Iowa's made a shift at quarterback, I think. They had a couple of Sullivan came in last week, and he looked pretty good against Northwestern. But again, Northwestern's not very good. We saw that. We beat up on Northwestern as well. Okay, so I think that's a coin flip game. And then I think we beat Nebraska. I 100% think we beat Nebraska. Look at some of the teams they played and some of the teams we played and compare it. That doesn't always work in college football, but that's a program that feels like it's trending downwards. Raiola has not been playing great ball. I think we beat them. We're faster than them. I think we're more athletic than them. I think we beat Nebraska. I do think we beat Minnesota, but I've been saying for a couple of weeks, that's a tougher game than people are thinking. That's a tougher Minnesota team than people thought when the season started. I don't think that's an easy one, but to think we're not going to win another game, I think we probably win 2 of those and finish with 7 wins. I really think we get 2 out of 3 against Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. I think it's probably Nebraska, Minnesota, but yeah, I hear you. Mitch James says Nebraska challenged Ohio State. 100% they did. I was watching it on the big screen at Scotty's. It felt like a moment where Ohio State played down to them. And again, maybe I'm finding narratives that make me feel better in this. If Wisconsin had played Ohio State that way, I would probably find narratives to make myself feel better about it. But we've also seen Nebraska struggle against Rutgers, right? Struggle against Purdue. Like Nebraska's been very up or down. I imagine they got really up for Ohio State, and they probably kind of play up and down depending on who they're going to play. I think we can beat Nebraska. The bigger point is we're not going winless the rest of the year. I just don't believe that. I think we finished with 7 wins. I agree with the point brought up that we're not beating Oregon. That game could get ugly. Like Oregon could get ugly. And I don't know what the line on that's going to be, but they're really good. They're fast. They're talented. They're athletic on the edges. Oh, I think we're going to beat Nebraska. I think we're going to beat Minnesota. I think we're going to hang with Iowa. This team is not, again, after a big loss at night, we have a tendency to really get frustrated and pessimistic. This team did hang with Penn State, was up 10-7. I think let's not go overboard with the loss would be my point. Eric has a good point here. Ohio State was looking ahead to Penn State 100%. That was the ultimate look ahead moment. And listen, Ohio State still won at the end. It is what it is. They pulled out. They're a better team, but 100% they're looking forward to a gigantic matchup against Penn State. And that's how college football works. As much as coaches and fans want to dismiss the idea of trap games, of look-aheads, it always happens. It happens every year to every team because they're 18 to 22-year-old young men. And people in Columbus we're already talking about those players about, hey, Penn State's coming up in 2 weeks. Just got it. Can't wait for that game. And that's in players' minds. It happens every weekend. All right, let's get a couple more comments here. Again, this is always the comment show. This is the last time I'm going to do this. This show is always going to be about owning takes. Like, we're going to be here every day. Win, loss, or indifferent. I have gotten so many takes from Penn State fans. I'm just going to throw a couple more up here. I've already addressed it a couple times. I was wrong. Steve, that didn't age well. Someone else, good job getting smoked by Penn State's backup quarterback. Savage, that was a butt kicking. It goes on and on and on. Think twice. Good call. Like, I had 100 different comments on Twitter, YouTube from Penn State fans, and congrats. 100%. Congrats. Y'all whooped our butts. And people will say, well, close game. I don't know. Penn State had 419 yards. We had 298. Penn State had 34 minutes time of possession. We had 25. Penn State averaged 5 yards per carry, 4.9. 5 yards per carry. We averaged 3. Second half was 21-3. That felt like a game where we kind of got put into the crock pot, right? Where it just was a slow cooking in the second half. And even though there were absolutely moments where we could have flipped it, it felt like it was much easier for Penn State to move the ball in the second half than it was for us. It felt like the scoreboard to me, and I could be wrong on this. This is, again, where I'll never tell anybody how to think, never tell anybody how to fan. It felt like the longer that game went on, the bigger that score margin was going to get, not that we had more opportunities to close it down. That was my take on it. I'll also point out it was 14-13 in start of fourth quarter. And if you get one lucky bounce, maybe anything can happen 100%. But we got thoroughly outplayed in the second half, in my opinion. And that was tough to watch. It was tough to be there. Couple more comments. I do want to bring this up. And Eric says 1-score game, 4 more minutes left. Definitely not a butt kick. I get that. I hear that perspective as well, 100%. Jim Mandel said Penn State defense line scheme was quite good. It was very good. And they were very good. That's a really good defensive line, good linebackers. They flew around to the ball. I thought they had a really good feel of what we were trying to do. But I also, goes back to the very first point of this show, I feel like we make it kind of easy on teams at times because they didn't respect our passing game in that game. And that's not all on me. That's not all on Locke at all. I thought our offensive line actually held up pretty well in pass pro. I will say that. But they were playing press man coverage on our receivers a ton of the game, right? Press man, I dare you to beat us. Press man single high, or they would have 2 deep, but it was still press man even when they had 2 deep. I need to go back and really watch the film, but there was a ton of we don't think you're going to beat us from a passing standpoint. And that's a reflection of how they felt about our receivers and our quarterback, or our scheme. So it made them easier. It made that easier for them to come downhill and really disrupt our zone scheme from a running standpoint. And they did that. Credit to them. We have to get better at punishing teams when they play press man, right? We have to get better at catching the ball. Again, I talked about that in the first segment. There's opportunities to catch the ball, and we just didn't. We didn't help Locke out. We didn't help the rest of the offense out with drops. There's also opportunities. I respect this about Longo. I know we're going to talk about Longo coming up. I respect the fact that on a second down, he tried to double move to Vinny Anthony. The pass was airmailed, but he did say, let's try to get that double move. Let's try to hit something. Didn't happen, but those are the shots you got to take, but those are the shots you got to take more consistently, and you got to hit. Otherwise, they're never going to back off, and they're going to keep 8 in the box, and it's going to be against a really good front. It's going to be really difficult to run the ball, and we saw that. We averaged 3 yards per carry, right? They dominated time of possession. I think our defense got a little gas in the second half, but this was not a defensive game that lost us this game. I've said it. I was in the post-game show, and I said I thought the defense wore down a little bit in the second half. I thought they caved a little bit, but they also gave up 28 points, and 7 of those were on a pick six. We did not lose this game because of the defense, is my point. Ideally, the defense needs to keep getting better. Ideally, the defense forces a strip sack or a pick, or they force field position with the turnover. That's the next step of this defense. That's the next evolution, where they get a little more disruptive. Excuse me. They get a little more disruptive. They get a little bigger. They get a little faster, and they force some of that. But the defense did not lose this game. The offense has to be better. The offense has to be better. You can't score 13 points and expect to beat Penn State and give up 7 Like the offense gave up 7 on a pick 6, right? You have to be better offensively. And the defense is getting there. I think the defense once again played a lot of bend but don't break. First half, they knocked out Drew LR, and they held them to 7 points. Like, you got to win those games when your defense plays like that at home. You got to. They came out, they played hard. I thought they were fine. They got to continue getting more disruptive. I think that's where the next crop of players are coming in, the Lafayelles, the Postas, the Heibergers, more reps for Allegro. I think those guys are going to up the disruptiveness on this defense. Some of the defense linemen coming in I really like. But the offense, you got to pull the weight, man. You cannot. This is not a Bama defense from several years ago where they're going to go out and give up 14. You got to be better offensively, and that's on everybody, right? Everybody had from Longo on down. That's on everybody. It is what it is. All right, we got to take one more quick break. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about Phil Longo. Is it just too hard for us to move the ball? And get all your questions, your thoughts, your questions. Again, this is the community show. I've probably already talked more than I should on the community show, but this show is about your thoughts, questions. We'll get into that next on Locked On Badgers. Really do appreciate every single person tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends over at Gametime. I use Gametime. So, true story. D'Angelo, man, if you're watching, first of all, respect the heck out of you for coming to Madison to see us. You came to the event. One of the most genuine, best Badger fans out there, D'Angelo from Columbus, Ohio, in enemy territory. He had never been to a game in Camp Randall. Never been to a game in Camp Randall. Drove up. We used Gametime to get him tickets, great tickets, better tickets than we had. And he was so stoked. He texted me. And that's what it's all about, right? Bringing Badger fans together, building community. He got to see under the lights a massive game. He got to experience jump around. And even though we lost, like, that nothing is better than talking to him and hearing him say, like, this was awesome. What an event. I was thrilled. I got to do jump around. And we got those tickets on Gametime. I got those tickets the day before on Gametime. Great prices, super simple, able to transfer it to him at Scotty's, and he was good to go with his lady. Like, that was like one of the best things ever because he's the most genuine Badger fan out there, and nobody deserves it more. So use Gametime to do stuff like that, like build memories, help someone out, go to amazing things, do more things in life. You're never going to be at the end of your life and be like, oh, man, I did too much stuff. No, do more stuff. Do that stuff with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Snag the things about the stress with Gametime. Download the account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, let's just make this last segment comments. A bunch of comments in here. I want to get to as many of them as possible. Let's see. A couple more here. Okay, this one was from, I didn't see who this was from, but the inability to catch the ball. We talked about that. You got to catch the ball. And it's been a season-long thing. Now, some of that, so Pauling's a dude. Like, Pauling is a really good receiver. We saw it last year. You don't catch 74 balls and do what he did last year, not be featured on shows coming into the season as among the best slot receivers in the country. He's a really good receiver. But there's something mental there. But you just got to be, like, if he keeps being inconsistent, you might need to find targets other places. And then the guy we talked about all the time, Tretch, had 2 drops too. Like, got to catch the ball. 100% agree with that. Uncultured Barbarian, one of the best dudes in the group, said, I'm glad you're here. Can't wait for the day until we can celebrate big wins. That's what it's all about, brother. That's what it's all about. The community is going to be here no matter what, win, loss, or indifferent. But the community is going to hit different when we start winning some of these big games. And it's going to happen. Like, there's an element of patience required that's really tough as a fan base. It's tough as a guy like hosts a show about it. You know, this is still only halfway through year 2, a little over halfway through year 2 of Luke Fickell. Okay. We do need an element of patience, which is why I was going back to what I said earlier. You're not going to lose the rest of the games this year. You're just not. I feel like that's an overreaction. I think they're going to come back. I think they're going to play Iowa really tough. I saw someone in the chat say Iowa's a 3.5-point favorite, which means they're at home. That means basically Vegas is looking at these teams to some degree. Vegas lines aren't always a perfect indicator of who's a better team, but these teams are in the same tier. We can absolutely beat Iowa, and that would be a great win, right? Like, Iowa's not a national great win. Like, there's national moment victories. Beating Penn State at night on national TV is one of those national moment games, right? Beating Bama, Oregon, USC in the Coliseum. Those are national moment games. But make no mistake, beating Iowa and Kinnick would be a tremendous victory. Iowa's always tough in Kinnick. They can run the ball. They just beat the brakes off Northwestern. Like, that's a good, solid Iowa football team in a really tough road environment that we all know is tough. That'd be a great win. And that would be the win that could really get this team back to 7 or 8 wins. Okay. Trevor says, man, I don't know how you can say the defense folded. They were constantly on the field in the second half. I just think they got drained. Yeah, I probably misspoke in the postgame. If I said they folded, that is the wrong term to use. And I would regret saying that. it's tough, right? Post game, where you're all in your emotions, and I try to, but yeah, I don't think they folded either. Trevor, I agree with you. I don't think they folded. I think they got drained. I think they got worn down. And ultimately, again, I said the offense has to be better. It has to be better. This game was not on the defense. This was not a defensive lapse game. They'll lie with us. Our Penn State to 7 points at halftime. So 100% agree with you there. Sharp says there's no way this team beats Iowa. Yeah, I was not that at that level. They're just not. Like both of us, Iowa and Wisconsin, are a tier below that top level, right? We're in the same tier. We have very similar type of talent levels, teams. I think we can absolutely beat Iowa. It would be a close game. It's a tough game. We can absolutely beat Iowa. Again, I apologize for my voice. I'm still kind of catching it back up. Dice, this coaching staff needs major work. Still no yak. Locke is worse than Mertz. Play literally anybody else like quarterback. Too many drops. Vinny Anthony is the best player. Lots to unpack here. The yak thing, I just can't. I talk about it a lot. I'm not going to belabor it. I think you need to find a guy who's getting those type of numbers. You just got to get more touches just to see. In a game you're struggling, man. You're struggling to get something going. You just got to try it. It feels very Isaac Garendo to me. I don't fully understand that one. Locke is worse than Mertz. I don't know. I don't really want to play that game necessarily. I just want to frame it as the quarterback spot needs to be better. It just has to be. And it's the rest of the pieces aren't going to come around until statistically you get better at that spot. It's just that, and that's not. I think everyone would agree with that. Whether that's Locke, whether it's got to get better. Play literally anybody else like quarterback. I want to talk about Mabry Mettoyer. Again, I said it earlier. He's a freshman. Don't throw him into like he needs to. You need to let young players develop, and I don't think you're going to want to throw him into Iowa at night. I just don't think that's the path there. And I agree with you. Vinny Anthony's a stud. Vinny's been really, really good. So I 100% agree with that. Let's pull some more live comments in here. Some of those comments are off our YouTube channel. Well, let's see more comments here. Stephen Keel says, hey, what day is Curtis going to be on? Curtis is coming on. Like, listen, again, this show is about owning the receipts. You know, I'll say this. I think like Curtis is getting a bunch of flack for his takes, and he should. I got flack for mine, right? He should. I'll also say this. A lot of people, like, if you're going to make takes, you're going to be wrong sometimes. And the measure of a person is if you can stand up when you're wrong and say, I was wrong. Like, that's on me. I'll try to get smarter going forward. And Curtis is all about that. Curtis watches a ton of film. He's sharp. He got this one wrong. I got this one wrong. But the measure of a person is if you can stand up afterwards and say, yeah, I got it wrong. Penn State won that game. They earned it. I thought we'd win it. I was wrong. Robert Sorensen says, don't hold the post game against Ryan. He was drinking. Facts. Big facts. Realist. Last big win, LSU 2016. That's so tough. Man, first of all, I was at that game. What a great game that was. Yeah. You're not going to beat Oregon this year, I don't think. Fickle has to get a signature win at some point, right? And one of my keys this year wasn't even the win, man. It was about, can you play close to these teams? Can you at the end of the game, in a one possession game, can you have the ball with the thought to drive down and win it, right? And that didn't happen even in this game. Again, it felt like Penn State pressure cooked us. It didn't happen against Bama. It didn't happen against USC with the second half collapse. I don't think it's going to happen against Oregon. It didn't happen last year it did happen last year against Ohio State. We were absolutely in that game more than this one. But I felt like we needed to play a little tighter these games this year. Christopher Grace. So Chris is one of my best friends. He's out in Connecticut. Appreciate you, brother. He's not a Wisconsin fan, but he knows as much football as anybody ever knows. Thank you for tuning in, my brother. Jim Mandel. Don't despair, Badger fans. We saw Indiana at 8-0. They may go 11-1, unheard of since 67. Yeah, seasons have ups and downs, right? And I still think do not let this – I'm trying to think of the right word, but there's a lot of football left to play this year still. And I do – like there's two big rivalry games coming up, and I think we can beat both of them. I think we can beat Nebraska. Obviously, all three of those games have trophies. I only really care about two of those trophies. The Nebraska Freedom thing, I just don't care about that trophy, but I do think we beat them. So, yeah, guys, we'll be okay. Like, Penn State was better than us. I thought we'd play better there. I thought we could trip them up. I think that game was there for the taking, and we just didn't take advantage. But partially, we're not taking advantage because we need better pieces in some spots still. Some more comments here. Let's wrap some of this up. There's a lot of pessimistic stuff in here, which I'll never tell anybody how to fan. Never tell anybody how to fan. Again, a couple of people saying there's no way we'll beat Minnesota or Nebraska. I disagree. I will say this. Let me throw this comment up here. Badgers were not prepared for the run threat of a backup quarterback. which makes sense since you don't prepare a ton for the backup quarterback. That's from Highlight Center. I thought there were some really weird run fits in the second half. The defense should have been better prepared. Again, I don't think it was a folded issue, but there were moments in the second half it felt like we didn't trust our eyes. We let some RPO stuff get to the outside with no outside contain, and it felt like they out-schemed us. Again, some of that's Kolnicky. He's a tremendous offensive coordinator, absolutely elite offensive coordinator. Some of that's Kolnicky, but it felt like our defense was on our toes a little bit too much, and we should have been a little bit better prepared for that. Quite frankly, I felt like we should have been a little bit better prepared for that. And in the second half, when they were trying to salt away the game, when we kind of knew they were throwing the ball or running the ball, it felt like we should have been able to hold up better there without the deep passing threat of Drew LR. We should have held up better there. I agree with that comment. Okay, a couple more comments here, then we'll wrap this up. Ryan says, this is where many of us thought this team would be. Even with a healthy TVD and Chez, everyone going crazy is, I don't even know what that last word is, but yeah, like I think most people thought, I don't know if people thought we lose every tough game on the schedule in terms of USC, Penn State. I think most people had Bama's loss. But yeah, we're not that far off from where record-wise people thought. I think the disappointment for people is how you've looked in some of the big games, and I respect that. I think if you hadn't folded in the second half of USC, for example, if that game stayed close, I think maybe people look at this differently. If you hadn't folded in the second half of this, I think maybe people would like feel better about it, right? And I'm not about moral victories, but there's still a different feel from 28-13 and 21-3 in the second half versus 28-21. That being said, like we can go beat Iowa next week, and everyone's going to come back around and be like, "Oh, good win! I'm feeling good about this." And I think that can happen. So don't lose the belief. I think we can beat Iowa next week. I really do. Couple things go differently in this game. Penn State was just better than us, though. I don't want to play that game. All right, let's wrap it there. Guys, really do appreciate you so much. On Wisconsin, as always, thank you for tuning in. A bunch more content coming up this week. I have some really fun guests coming up this week. A big-time recruit coming up. I think a couple people maybe from Wisconsin coming up. A couple of our analysts coming up. Definitely we'll have Curtis on. We've already talked about it. Jeff Olson says I was beatable 100%. Walleye Nick says Brian Smith was right from the start. We will not see progress until year 3. Yeah, Brian Smith's been pretty on top of this. The defensive line they're bringing in 24-25, that is going to be, I think, a good group that's going to help us out a lot. So P says, love you all. Love you, P. Really do appreciate you guys. Ryan says every game from here on out except Oregon is a toss-up. I agree. All right, we'll wrap it there on Wisconsin. Go check out Locked On Big Ten. When you're done with this, all the biggest Big Ten news on that channel on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.